At the Carter family dinner, my father raised his glass and said, "I'm proud of Nathaniel and of Lillian." Then, right in front of everyone, he glanced past me and added, "And of course, some lessons come from failure, too." They laughed. I smiled, because in my purse was a sealed envelope that would burn down every lie they were clinging to. Before I tell you what was in that envelope, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Has someone in your family ever made you feel invisible? If yes, this story is for you. My name is Vivienne Carter. I'm 33. I've closed million-dollar deals across continents, but I had never once been told by my father that he was proud of me. I grew up in a grand old mansion on the northern outskirts of Chicago, a place where everything had to be perfect down to the last millimeter. My father, Alaric Carter, was a famous real estate tycoon, a symbol of power and icy control. To him, everything could be measured in value land. Property, reputation, even his children. I was the middle child, squeezed between the eldest son, the golden heir of the family, and the youngest daughter, our mother's treasured gem. And me, I was the inconvenience that didn't fit the mold. The daughter who didn't attend his alma mater, didn't follow the family business, and dared to choose a different path for herself. Strangely, I still longed for his approval. I used to think, if I become better, more successful, if I bring more prestige to the Carter name, maybe then he'll be proud of me. But in all my 30-something years, not once had he said, "I'm proud of you." And then came this year's family reunion, an event held in his honor. But it became the very moment that turned my entire world upside down. A luxurious gift, a hidden envelope, and a truth that had been buried for 3 decades rose to the surface, right in front of everyone. I honestly can't recall the last time he looked at me with true affection. Maybe he never did. Growing up, I learned how to watch every step inside that house, where every word had to be weighed carefully and every mistake was examined under a microscope. My father, Alaric Carter, never needed to yell. He didn't have to. A single glance from him could silence the entire house. One careless comment could embed itself in my mind for years. "Vivienne A- is not something to be proud of. You talk too much. A smart woman knows when to stay quiet. That Callahan girl got into Harvard. And you only chose Penn." I learned that in this house, love was something you had to earn. It had to be traded for achievements, and even when you earned it, it could be taken back at any moment. My brother Nathaniel was different. He was the firstborn son, the rightful heir to the Carter Group, and our father's pride since his high school days. When I was 12, I won second place in a statewide debate competition. That night, I brought the trophy home with trembling hands. My father glanced at it and asked just one question: who got first place? But that same year, Nathaniel scored a single goal in a friendly soccer match, and the entire family threw a party for him. My youngest sister, Lillian, was the textbook good girl. She wasn't exceptional but always said the right things. She smiled at the right time. She had a way of softening father with just a gentle touch on his shoulder. She didn't need to excel. She only needed to be sweet. And me, with my logical mind, sharp observation, and blunt honesty since childhood, I was always the one who disrupted the mood at family dinners. I used to think if I just studied harder, worked more, and earned better, maybe he would see me differently. At 18, I graduated from high school as valedictorian and earned a full scholarship to the University of Pennsylvania, an elite institution. But because it wasn't Dartmouth, his and Nathaniel's school, it was dismissed as an emotional decision. At 21, I interned at an investment fund in Midtown Manhattan, working 70-hour weeks, wearing cheap shoes and sharing a room with 2 strangers. When I told him, he asked only one thing: "Did you meet anyone powerful?" Meaning networking. I used to carry this foolish belief. If I became wildly successful, maybe, just maybe, he would be proud. If I could stand tall on my own, maybe he would finally stop comparing me to Nathaniel. But that belief, it faded, slowly, year by year. Last year, I was offered an executive role at a global investment firm based in London. I was the first choice for a senior leadership role, a move so rare that in New York finance they called it 1 in 1,000. I texted my father simply, "I've just accepted the position of North American Chief Strategy Officer for Aurora Capital." They'll announce it publicly next week. His response: "Don't forget what comes easily can be lost just as easily." That night, I sat alone in my penthouse apartment. On the table lay a new contract with a seven-figure salary. Outside the window, the city lights of Chicago glittered, and inside me, it was a hollow that stretched endlessly. There were 3 weeks left until the annual Carter family reunion, held every last Sunday of June, which also coincided with Father's Day. It's the one day the entire Carter clan gathered at the lakeside estate in Winnetka. Every year it played out like a ceremonial affair, where my father Alaric Carter was praised like a monarch of a dynasty. I thought about not attending, but then I got a call from my mother. Her voice was gentle, as if trying to suppress any emotion. "You'll come, won't you, Vivienne?" your father asked. Just those 3 words your father asked. It was enough to silence me for several seconds. He asked, not about my work, not about my life, but about my presence, about my role in this perfectly rehearsed family drama. That night, lying in the darkness of my penthouse listening to the wind against the glass, I made a decision. This time I wouldn't just come home. I would arrive as someone who mattered. I'd bring him a gift he couldn't ignore. It took me nearly 2 weeks to track down the exact Bentley model he once admired at an auction last year. Midnight sapphire blue, dark as a Chicago winter night. Italian leather interior, bespoke sound system. Custom plates engraved with his birth year ALC 1955. I wired the full payment from my account, almost an entire year's salary. But I didn't hesitate. I wasn't buying a car. I was buying a chance. A glimmer of hope. A sentence I'd never heard in my life: "I'm proud of you." But what I didn't expect was that in my handbag next to my lipstick and phone, I was also carrying something else, a sealed envelope. Inside were 3 pages of DNA results I had quietly obtained just months ago. At the time, I hadn't planned on using them. I brought them as a shield, something between a last resort and self-defense. But deep down, I knew, if this year's reunion turned out like the rest, the veiled insults, the dismissive glances, the silence, just one word, one look, it would be enough for me to tear open that envelope. 3 months earlier, I had sent off a DNA test to a personal genetics company, just out of curiosity about my maternal European ancestry. But what shocked me wasn't the Scottish or German markers. It was the red-letter message at the bottom of the report: "No genetic match found with declared paternal identity." I thought there had been a mistake. Then one weekend, I quietly went back to my parents' house and took one of my father's hairbrushes. The second test gave me the same result: Richard Alaric Carter was not my biological father. I didn't sleep that night after I got the results. I drank half a bottle of Cabernet, and then a strange wave moved through my chest. One I couldn't name, but felt like recognition. So this is why I never felt like I belonged. Why do I look different? Why did I think differently? Why could he hug Nathaniel, but never once lay his hand on my shoulder with any warmth? I told no one. Not my mother. Not Lillian. Not even Taylor, my best friend since college. I kept the result as my secret. A mirror that reflected all the years I had questioned my worth. Then I slipped it into my handbag tucked in between the deep red silk lining, and I brought it to the reunion alongside the gleaming new Bentley, now waiting at the Evanston showroom just a few miles from the estate. I didn't know exactly what I hoped for. A miracle, a hug, or maybe just a look that wasn't so cold. All I knew was I was ready. Saturday afternoon, I drove the Bentley to Evanston. The showroom had it prepped and waiting. In the front seat, a bouquet of white lilies, my mother's favorite flower, and a small box with a silver-winged key. I'd asked them to tie it with a deep-colored ribbon, nothing flashy, elegant, understated, just the way my father liked things. I wanted to deliver the gift early so I could have a moment with him before the crowd arrived. My mother would be at her charity meeting that afternoon, and my father, undoubtedly in the library reading Forbes or arranging paperwork like he did every weekend. The car rolled smoothly past the old iron gates along the stone-paved driveway toward the estate. Maple trees on both sides rustled in the breeze. Everything looked just as it did when I was a girl. Only I had changed. I parked near the side entrance and knocked. My father opened the door. The soft afternoon light behind him cast him in silhouette, tall, motionless like a statue. He was wearing khakis and a white shirt, a cup of tea in one hand. "Vivienne, you're a few hours early." His voice was calm, as if I were the maid who had shown up ahead of schedule. "I wanted to give you a Father's Day gift," I said, and held out the small box. He opened the lid. When he saw the Bentley logo, his eyes paused for a second. "This is I custom ordered it. It's parked outside." We stepped out onto the porch. The car stood gleaming on the gray stone, its midnight sapphire coat catching the early summer sun like a piece of sculpture. My father circled the car. His hand ran lightly along its edge like someone admiring a piece of carved marble. "Absurd," he said, still not looking at me. "Too much. Unnecessary." "It's a gift," I replied. "Not because you need it, but because I wanted to give it." He said nothing. He opened the driver's side door, slid in, and started the engine. The sound was low and deep, like a whisper laced with power. After a few test laps around the long driveway, he pulled up and parked. No thank you. No embrace. Just a single sentence, sharper than a Chicago wind in February. "You must be doing quite well, to throw money around like that." The car was pulled into the garage. I stood there, the velvet box still in my hand, and he walked straight back inside, as if I hadn't been there at all. That night I called Taylor from the nearby hotel where I was staying. Her voice came through the speaker, familiar, safe, like a port after a long, bitter storm. "Don't tell me he did it again." "He didn't accept the gift," I said, eyes staring out the glass. "I mean, he took it, but he didn't accept me." She was silent for a few seconds, then sighed. "Then take the car back. He doesn't deserve it." I gave a bitter laugh. "Tomorrow's the reunion. Maybe. In front of everyone, he'll act differently." "Vivienne." Her voice slowed. "Don't open that envelope. Not unless you're truly ready to end this for good." I didn't promise her. But I knew. The envelope was still in my bag, and it felt heavier than everything else I owned. Sunday. Reunion day. The weather looked like a real estate ad, soft sun, gentle breeze, crystal clear sky. The lawn was trimmed to perfection. The chairs and tables were arranged like a home decor magazine shoot. By the time I arrived, the front yard was already lined with luxury cars. And parked right in the center was the Bentley I had gifted the day before. Now spotless, gleaming. There was a small wooden sign placed beside it, Chairman Alaric Carter's Special Edition Bentley, a gift from the family. From the family, I stood still for a moment. My face didn't move, but my hand tightened around my handbag strap. Inside it, the envelope still sat quietly. I walked up the stone patio past neatly trimmed climbing roses wrapped around the glass doors. A white-shirted server bowed slightly, holding out a tray of chilled champagne in a silver-rimmed glass. I took one instinctively, but didn't drink. The main hall was already packed. This was the Carter family stage, where every member had a part to play. The successful older brother, the gentle younger sister, the powerful father, the perfect mother, and me, Vivienne. The silent supporting character is standing at the edge of the family photo, even though I was the only one in this entire bloodline who had ever made it to the Forbes list. "Vivienne, you made it." Nathaniel's voice rang out from the corner. As always, he showed up in a custom-tailored Milanese suit with a vintage Patek Philippe on his wrist, and the kind of expression that said he was starring in a private bank commercial. He pulled me in for a gentle hug, the kind you give when pretending closeness in public. "That Bentley is insane. When did you even place the order?" I smiled. 2 months ago. You gifted it to Dad, huh? Smart move." He nodded as if I'd just closed a great business deal. "Sometimes people need reminders that you still know how to contribute." I didn't reply, but I knew exactly what I was hearing. Not far off, my father was surrounded by his usual circle: 2 Harvard Business School buddies, a state senator, and a CNBC finance host. He was talking about the car, V8 twin-turbo engine, entirely hand-stitched interior. "This isn't a mass production model." I had to speak to the North American director directly. I heard him say, not once did he say my daughter gave it to me. Not once did he mention me. And the cruelest part, I saw him smile. A real smile. The kind of expression I had been chasing for 33 years. My mother appeared beside me. She wore a silver gray gown, light makeup, and an uneasy look in her eyes. You look beautiful. They praised your Zurich speech in the papers. Your father read it, but he won't say so. I know, I said quietly. And suddenly, I felt exhausted. She gently touched my hand. Vivienne, just for today, please don't do anything out of line. You know what I mean. I gave her a small smile. Don't worry, Mom. I've memorized the script a long time ago. I moved through the crowd like an actress in someone else's film. The greetings, the questions, all sounded like recycled dialogue. I heard you work in New York, still doing well in finance. So when are you getting married? I responded with the same old lines, the Vivienne Carter performance everyone expected to hear. But no one was really listening. Just as I was about to step out onto the balcony for air, Lillian appeared. My youngest sister, soft-spoken, always excused because she's still young. I heard about the car. It's stunning. But you knew he wouldn't thank you. I nodded. I knew. And you still gave it to him. I looked at her. Her face reminded me of my own when I was younger, and answered, I wanted to see, just once, how he'd react if he was loved without having to earn it. But I'd already seen, and the answer was, he would smile, but at others, and steal the spotlight. Dinner took place in the grand dining room with its soaring ceilings and French crystal chandeliers hung like glass crowns. A long walnut table dressed in pale cream linen, 24 chairs placed in the exact same order as every year never changed. Seating was a silent ranking. The closer to my father, the more valuable you were. I was placed near the end, between two guests from his country club, a real estate investor and a restaurant chain owner. They didn't know me, but I knew they were placed next to me to keep me away from the center zone. At the head of the table, Nathaniel sat to my father's right, Lillian to his left. My mother was seated across from him at the far end, nearly 20 feet away, just like her place in the family present, but never truly seen. I sat there, in front of a delicately plated burrata salad, a wine glass filled to exactly 1/3, and a scented candle flickering slowly like my mother's quiet decades-long endurance. Then my father stood. The Carter family isn't just a name, he said, his voice commanding as if giving a TED Talk. It's a legacy, a set of values built over generations. I'm incredibly proud of my children, of Nathaniel for his smart factory project underway in Austin, a strategic leap in modern industrial development. Nathaniel nodded modestly as applause followed. I sipped my wine just enough to stay calm. And of Lillian, my sweet daughter who always gives back to the community. Her fundraising for the retirement homes is a testament that the Carters don't just build wealth, we build society. More applause. And as for... He glanced around, his eyes skimmed over me like someone glancing past an empty chair. The rest, I believe true success lies not in titles or salaries, but in preserving tradition. And no one teaches that better than family. No name, no praise, no recognition. Even though I was the highest earning person in that room. Even though I had gifted him a Bentley, which he'd proudly shown off all evening. I set my wine glass down, quietly, but my hand no longer trembled. I stood up. No one moved. No one had ever stood during one of my father's speeches. My mother turned toward me, eyes wide as if pleading, "Don't do this." Nathaniel frowned. Lillian covered her mouth. I smiled, softly, like a host stepping onto a stage. Except this time the stage was a lifetime lived in someone else's shadow. "Thank you, Father," I began, my voice calm. That was an inspiring speech as always. It's just, I'm not sure which group I fall into. The ones you're proud of or the ones preserving tradition, I guess. I'm still the only person here who's never heard the words, "I'm proud of you." No one laughed. Every eye in the room fixed on me. My father still stood. Glass in hand, his expression was like chiseled stone. I looked him straight in the eye and continued. You once said, titles don't define success. So allow me to remind you. I was just promoted to North American Chief Strategy Officer at a global investment fund. I did it with no support, no doors held open, just myself, and the silence of a father who never believed I deserved it. The room went so quiet, I could hear the candle wick crackling. I pulled out my phone, opened a PDF of the article from the International Finance magazine with a photo of me speaking in Zurich. I placed it in front of him. No need to read the whole thing. Just say the words, "You did well," and I'll leave. I won't ask for anything else. He looked at me just for a moment, as if weighing power against emotion. Then he replied, voice steady. The thing is, anyone can pay for a magazine feature. You're good at performing. But this family doesn't need actors. And that was clarity. I wasn't angry anymore. I understood. The air in the dining room froze, as if every molecule of oxygen had just been sucked out of the space. I remained standing, between two rows of chairs, between two worlds. The truth, and a polished fiction carefully curated for decades. My hand moved slowly into my handbag. Every eye followed, as if I were pulling out a gun. But what I pulled out, it was an envelope, sealed pure white with two handwritten lines. Vivienne Carter, confidential results. I placed it down in the middle of the table, directly in front of my father. I used to think, I began, voice still steady. That's the reason you could never accept me. It was because I wasn't good enough. I tried to change my grades, my school, my career, even my wardrobe, the way I spoke. I tried everything. I looked him straight in the eye. But it turns out, I couldn't change the one thing you could never accept. Biological truth. The entire table became alive, with nothing but silence. Lillian covered her mouth. My mother's face turned pale. Nathaniel stood up abruptly. Vivienne, what are you talking about? I didn't look at him. This envelope contains the DNA test results between me and father, I said. 2 separate tests, from 2 different labs, and both clearly state Mr. Alaric Carter is not my biological father. The words exploded like a silent firework. No smoke, no flames, but the force-buried 33 years of family history. My mother dropped her head. Nathaniel stormed toward me. This is insane. What the hell are you doing in front of everyone? This isn't some stunt, I said. It's the answer to why I've spent my entire life being treated like an outsider. My father still hadn't touched the envelope. He sat there holding his wineglass, staring at it, like it was some strange object from another planet. When did you know? I asked. My voice is lower now, but sharper. Since I was born, or only once I got old enough to ask questions, but too young to find the answers on my own. There was no answer, only silence, which in this house had always been his preferred form of confession. But this time I didn't look away. I no longer needed him to say anything. I'd heard enough. I looked around the table. At the wealthy relatives, the colleagues, the politicians, the businessmen, all of them with eyes down, as if someone had ripped back the velvet curtain, exposing the chaos behind the stage. 33 years, I said, I've tried to belong in this family. And today, at the very dinner where you accepted the gift I gave, but rejected me, I think I've finally earned the right to walk away from this role. I pushed the envelope closer toward him. You can keep it, or throw it away, that's up to you, but I don't need it anymore. I removed the cloth napkin from my lap, placed it gently on my plate, turned, and walked out, leaving behind a room full of people drowning in emotions none of them dared to name. I didn't hear any footsteps chasing after me. Not a single voice called my name, not one word of apology. Only the sound of the front door creaking open, and the wind from Lake Michigan rushing in behind me, cool and sharp like a sigh 33 years overdue. Dusk had fallen by the time I stepped out of the mansion. The windows still glowed with warm yellow light, but to me they no longer looked inviting. They were just stage lights shining on a show that had finally been shut down. The big maple tree by the driveway rustled in the wind, shedding a few leaves at my feet, even though it was still summer. The scent of lavender from the garden beds floated faintly through the air. But this time, It didn't comfort me. The Bentley was still there, parked in the middle of the stone-paved courtyard. Shiny, impressive, proud. Still the same car I had specially ordered to match my father's tastes. Still the car he never thanked me for. Still the car he showed off like it belonged to him. But not anymore. I opened my bag, pulled out the spare key, the one I'd kept out of habit. But now, it felt like a symbol of something else entirely: control. I pressed the button. Beep! The lights flashed. The doors unlocked with a soft click. No one followed me. But as I looked up at the second-floor window, I saw a silhouette. Small, thin, standing behind the curtain. It was my mother. I couldn't tell what she was thinking. I didn't know whose side she was on. Maybe she'd stayed silent for so long she could no longer hear the sound of her own heart. I slid into the driver's seat, adjusted the mirrors, started the engine. The low, smooth hum filled the quiet night like music. But today, it wasn't a gift anymore. It was a part of me I was reclaiming. Through the rearview mirror, I saw the front door open. My father stepped out. In his hand was the envelope. He didn't call my name. He just stood there. His white dress shirt was now wrinkled. His tie was undone halfway. His face, no longer the calm, composed man who controlled everything, but an old man confused, standing in the ruins of his image. I looked at him through the mirror. Our eyes met one last time. I didn't speak. I didn't nod. I didn't wave. I simply shifted the gear. The Bentley rolled forward slowly, smoothly, pulling away from the courtyard, as if it even understood this place. I was no longer where I belonged. I didn't drive back to the hotel. I drove straight into the city, through familiar streets where I'd grown up, past tall windows and grand homes. All of it is now just background scenery. I wasn't escaping anymore. I was stepping out of a role, out of a space, out of an identity that had imprisoned me for too long. I parked in front of a small hotel in the Gold Coast neighborhood, turned off the engine, got out. Inside my room, I kicked off my shoes, sat in a chair by the window, and for the first time in years, I wasn't wondering if I was worthy. I just felt real. I woke up the next morning, not to an alarm clock, but to the phone vibrating nonstop beside me. The first name that lit up the screen: Lillian. 5 missed calls. Then Nathaniel. 2 missed. Mom. 6. Private number. 1 call. I placed the phone down on the table, pulled back the curtains. The morning sunlight spilled into the hotel room, as if it were whispering, "Wake up, Vivienne. A different life has begun." I made coffee, didn't turn on the TV, didn't check my email. I just sat in the armchair, watching Chicago slowly come alive. Cyclists gliding past. Street cleaners are brushing the pavement. The distant ding of a passing streetcar. Life was moving forward, and for the first time in 33 years, after being tethered to the gaze of one man, I was learning how to breathe. By noon, I picked up the phone again. The first text was from Lillian. "Where are you?" Everyone is freaking out. Then Dad yelled at Mom, then shattered his wine glass on the floor. He didn't leave the study all night. "Nathaniel wants to call the family lawyer. Said you're making stuff up. I don't know who to believe, but I trust you. I do." I held the phone. Didn't call her back. Just typed one line: "I'm okay. And I don't regret it." That evening, Mom called. I let it ring for a while, then finally picked up. Her voice was soft, tired, and for the first time, real. "Vivienne, I didn't think it would go this far." "No, Mom," I replied gently. "It didn't go far. It just finally went where it needed to." Silence. Then she asked, "When did you find out?" 3 months ago." She paused. Then her voice cracked. "I always hoped that secret would die with me." She was trembling now. "I never thought you'd bring it to the dinner table." "I didn't plan to," I said. But when that whole room looked at me like I didn't exist, I realized the truth isn't a weapon. It's the only way forward. And then she told me, for the first time. When I was 22, a student at Wellesley. I fell in love with a man from MIT. His name was Jonathan Mercer. We met at a concert in Cambridge. I got pregnant. When your grandfather found out, he forced me to break things off and move back home. Then I met Alaric at a fundraiser. His family needed prestige. Mine needed to hide a scandal. He knew, from the very beginning. I closed my eyes. Something fell onto my chest. Not tears, but a weight that had been pressing there for years was finally slipping away. "Do you regret it?" I asked. "No," she whispered, "because if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have had you." After we hung up, I sat in that room for over 2 hours. No thoughts, no plans, just being, not as Alaric Carter's daughter, not as the third-tier heir, not as Vivienne who always had to try harder, just Vivienne. After the call with my mother, I didn't feel the urge to talk to anyone else. I just opened the DNA results again on my laptop. In the extended genetic matches section, one name stood out. Jonathan Mercer. Male, estimated age 60, genetic match, 49.8%. Next to his name was a small blue icon, possible father. I didn't message him right away. Instead, I Googled his name. Jonathan Mercer, Professor Emeritus of Electrical Engineering at MIT, founder of a green technology company based in Vermont. There was a photo of him receiving an award in 2017. Bright eyes, high forehead, a gentle smile. There was something deeply familiar with his face. Something I never knew I was missing until I saw it. I thought about it for 3 days. Then I sent the email. "Dear Mr. Mercer, I know this is an unusual message, but I believe we may be biologically related. My name is Vivienne Carter. My mother is Eleanor Shaw. She studied at Wellesley. I'm not expecting anything except a confirmation or a denial, but if you're open to a conversation, I think I've been waiting my whole life for it." I didn't expect much, but within 12 hours I received a reply. Vivienne. "Thank you for reaching out. Your message left me speechless in both senses of the word. I never knew you existed. But if what you're saying is true, I believe we both deserve to find out more. I'll be in Boston next week for a conference. If you'd like pick a coffee shop, I'll come meet you." That day, I flew to Boston. I chose a small cafe in Beacon Hill where the red brick townhouses and cobblestone sidewalks felt like a place that had endured quietly for generations. I arrived early, wore a cream blouse and gray slacks, hair tied in a low bun, no makeup, no brand labels. I wasn't there to impress. I was there to show up, as myself. He walked in at 10:08 a.m. I recognized him immediately. And I knew. He recognized me too. When our eyes met, it didn't feel like looking at a stranger. It felt like looking into a mirror. Not because I looked like someone he once knew, but because I looked like him. We sat down. 10 seconds of silence. Then he smiled gently. "You have my eyes." I smiled back, not sure if I should feel proud or nervous. We talked for over 2 hours. I told him about my childhood. Not in detail, just enough so he would know what it meant to live a life under a name that he never really wanted. He told me about my mother, how they met, how he had once planned to propose, and then suddenly all communication stopped. Back then there were no cell phones, no email. One day she just disappeared. I didn't know if I'd been rejected or erased. Now I understand. I didn't cry, I didn't blame, I didn't ask for anything. I just looked at him, a man who should have been a stranger, and asked myself, maybe. I wasn't unworthy. Maybe I was just planted in the wrong soil. Before we said goodbye, he rested his hand on the table, not touching me, but close, just close enough to leave the choice to me. I'm not here to play catch-up or take a role I've never had. That would require time and history I don't have. But if you'd like, I'd be honored to be a part of something, anything, whatever you're ready for. I looked at him. I don't need anyone to be my father anymore. But I do need to know that I'm not invisible. And you just gave me that. I returned to Chicago on a cloudy afternoon. It didn't rain, but the sky was gray enough to weigh down the mood, if I let it. I didn't go back to my parents' house, or to the high-rise apartment that had carried so many lonely nights. Instead, I rented a small studio in Old Town. where used bookstores lined the sidewalk. Cafes spilled warm light onto brick pavement, and kids rode skateboards past my window. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't grand, but it was real. I began writing out the story of my life. Not for publication, but to cleanse. Not with elegant phrasing, but with the rough, unfiltered truths I'd spent years avoiding. I wrote about the time I got a B+ and was made to stand in the hallway for an hour, about the speech trophy that was tucked into a kitchen cabinet instead of the glass display, about my mother's eyes always filled with something unspoken, but never quite brave enough to say it out loud. A week later, Lillian called. "Can we meet anywhere that isn't home?" I picked a small bakery, corner table, window facing the street. When she walked in, I knew instantly this was no longer the obedient little sister. That version of her had vanished the moment I stood up at that dinner table. She began, then hesitated. "I'm sorry," I said, "for putting you in the middle." "No, don't say that." She shook her head. For the first time in my life, someone said out loud what we've all been thinking, but never dared to say. "You didn't break this family, Vivi. You freed it." She told me about Dad. The rage behind closed doors. The barbed words, even the time he shattered one of her paintings simply because it didn't look real enough. "I thought it was just me," I whispered. "No. We all saw it. You were just the only one brave enough to name it." Then she pulled out an envelope, placed it on the table. "I don't know what happens next between you and him, but no matter what, this belongs to you." Inside was a handwritten letter, my mother's handwriting. Soft, rounded, careful. "My dearest Vivienne, I can't turn back time. I can't heal every wound I ignored. But I'm learning how to begin again. And if you'll let me, I want to walk beside you. Not as a spokesperson for this family, but as a real mother, for the first time in my life." I folded the letter, said nothing, but something inside me softened, like a block of ice starting to melt, one drop at a time. I never went back to the old house. Instead, I invited Mom and Lillian over to the studio. We made dinner together for the first time. No servers, no silver cutlery, no flower arrangements or $1,000 wine. Just three women, finally sitting together. No performances, no roles. Just us. One Monday morning, I received a FedEx envelope from a law firm with a very familiar name, Preston and Gray, LLP. The Carter family's legal team for over 20 years. Inside were 3 neatly typed pages printed on thick embossed paper. Request for return of property, Bentley Flying Spur, citing misuse of intent and formal retraction of defamatory claims, affecting the honor and reputation of Mr. Alaric Carter. I wasn't surprised. But what made me pause was the final line: "Failure to comply may result in legal and public action to protect the Carter family's image." The Carter family. That phrase, for the first time in my life, made me laugh. I wasn't angry. I wasn't afraid. I simply opened my laptop, typed up an email to my own lawyer, a young woman I'd worked with during a conference in Zurich. Subject line: "Let's return the car," but not quietly. 3 days later, I arranged for Bentley to pick up the car directly from the parking lot beneath the Carter Group headquarters. The delivery agent brought along a return envelope with all the formal documentation, but inside wasn't just paperwork. It also contained a handwritten letter, the first and last one I would ever send to my father. To Mr. Alaric Carter. "The car you've been using no longer belongs to you, just like the acknowledgment you never gave me. This vehicle is being reclaimed without thanks. I don't need it anymore, just as I no longer need your gaze to determine my worth. I won't sue, I won't retaliate, because I don't need to win, I just need to be free. Keep the Carter name as your final suit of armor, because starting today, I no longer wear it. Sincerely, Vivienne Mercer." 3 days later, I went to the Cook County Clerk's office, filled out the legal name change form, not because I hated the old name, but because I wanted to claim a name that no longer carried rejection. I chose the name Mercer. Not because Jonathan was the perfect father, but because he didn't need me to earn acknowledgement. When I held the new certificate in my hand, I felt something I hadn't in years. Light. As if someone had finally unshackled the invisible chains around my chest. Vivienne Mercer. Not a powerful name. Not a headline-worthy one, but it was mine, for the first time ever. That evening, I sent one final email to Nathaniel. Not to reconcile, not to explain, just a single line. Thank you for making it so clear that I never belonged there. Then I began packing, not with noise, not in rage. I only took what was real. A few old books, a journal of investment notes, and one photo frame. A picture of me and my mother taken the week before. She cooked breakfast on her own for the first time in 27 years. 6 months after I changed my name and left the Carter family, autumn arrived in Chicago. The trees along Clark Street turned golden. Cafes started serving cinnamon apple pies. Twinkle lights hung from awnings. The city grew quieter, but not sad. It felt like something was healing, just like me. I began teaching part-time at the University of Chicago, finance and strategic management, once a week. On the first day of class, I wore a plain white shirt and black slacks. No blazer, no brands, no labels. I only brought one slide. Finance isn't just about how you grow wealth, it's about how you choose to use power. I watched the students look at me, not with fear, but with trust. And for the first time, I answered every question from a place that didn't need to hide anymore. I also started writing, not for publishing, but to purify. I wrote about boardroom meetings where I was interrupted, about nights I survived on instant noodles in New York, working until 2 a.m. in a windowless office, about the night I stood up at dinner and placed an envelope on the table, and silence fell on an entire dynasty. I called the manuscript Silence and Rebirth. I was invited to speak at a global women's leadership forum in Vancouver. I told my story. No names, no bitterness, no victimhood, just a roadmap for anyone trying to escape the golden cage of expectations. At the end, a middle-aged woman came up to me. Tears shimmered in her eyes. I just filed for divorce, she said, after 27 years. And now I know I wasn't wrong. I was just living in a framework where there was no space for me. I hugged her. We didn't say anything else. Because of some things, just need to be seen. My mother now lives in a small apartment near Lake Michigan. She's learning pottery, practicing meditation, and traveling alone for the first time. Lillian is studying social work. I want to help girls like you once were, she told me. We have dinner every Saturday. No reservations, no agenda, no need, just us. As for Jonathan Mercer, the man I once thought was just a biological footnote, has become one of the kindest minds in my life. We email weekly, share articles, market trends, and random thoughts, like how he's learning to use Instagram because his kids won't stop pestering him. He's never called me daughter. But one day in an email he wrote, if I had to do it all over again, I'd still want the girl with your eyes and that unshakable will. I printed that email, framed it in wood, not to show off, but to remind myself. Some forms of love don't need a name, they just need to be real. I stood on the bridge over the Chicago River. Snow drifted lightly around me. The water below was still, like a mirror, reflecting no one else but me. No longer someone's daughter. No longer the one left out, just me. And for the first time in my life, I knew that was enough. If you've ever lived your whole life waiting to be acknowledged, if you've ever kept silent to protect a perfect family, I want you to know this. You don't have to belong somewhere to deserve love. You are worthy. Even if no one calls you daughter, even if you're the one who has to stand up and say, I am enough. And if this story touched you, please hit like and subscribe to follow our journey through stories of family healing and the path to finding yourself again. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember that sometimes the deepest revenge isn't making others hurt. It's living the life you should have had from the beginning. A life of freedom, a life of love, but this time the kind you choose.